Bonjour, monsieur et dames.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you once again for your patience. The 16th meeting of the 16th session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues is called to order. Distinguished members of the Forum, distinguished observers and friends, ladies and gentlemen, we will begin considering agenda item 13, provisional agenda for the 17th session. The provisional agenda for the 17th session has been issued in document EC19 2017 L2. Are there any comments on the provisional agenda? May I take it that the Forum is ready to approve the provisional agenda for the 17th session as set out in that document? I hear no objection. It is so decided. Distinguished members of the Forum, distinguished observers and friends, ladies and gentlemen, we will now take up agenda item 14, adoption of the report of the Permanent Forum on its 16th session. The draft decisions of the Forum, as contained in documents EC 19 2017 L2, L4 to L8, and as contained in an informal paper in English, have been circulated in the room. I first invite the rapporteur, Mr. Brian Keane, to introduce those parts of the draft report contained in documents EC 19 2017 L2 and L4 to 8 and in the informal paper, and to inform members of the Forum of any revisions to the draft proposals. Mr. Keane, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Document L2 has no revisions. It contains recommendations that will go before the Economic and Social Council. Document L4, paragraph 2. Sixth line, after Indigenous peoples, insert the word rights. Under L5, matters calling for action by the Economic and Social Council follow-up on the recommendations of the Permanent Forum, Empowerment of Indigenous Women. Paragraph 11, under Indigenous Youth. Fourth line, the participation of Indigenous youth, add in key, delete all relevant. United Nations meetings, add and processes most relevant to Indigenous issues. Document L6, implementation of the 6 mandated areas of the Permanent Forum with reference to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Paragraph 1, line 8, after peoples, delete a large number of whom reported on the importance of the implementation of the Declaration on the occasion of its 10th anniversary. Paragraph 5, Line 6, delete continues to give rise to, insert remains a matter of. Paragraph 6, line 4, delete the S on the end of rights. Delete great, delete nation. Oh, excuse me. These are additions. Add the S on the end of rights. Add great, add nation before and after Sioux. Next line, delete given and add considering. Next line, delete construction of the Dakota Access. So it now reads, the permanent forum calls upon the government of the United States of America to comply with the provisions recognized in the Declaration and to ensure the rights of the Great Sioux Nation to participate in decision-making, considering that the pipeline will affect their rights, lives, and territory. 1, 2, 3. Line 10, same paragraph. Delete of, insert into. Same paragraph. Line 12, after officers, insert that occurred during protests to prevent construction. Paragraph 8, line 2, delete promote and ensure, add promote and guarantee. After the, line 2, add rights. Line 8, add at the end with their full and effective participation. The paragraph now reads, the permanent forum urges Columbia to promote and guarantee the rights of Indigenous peoples in the development of the regulatory framework of the Columbian Peace Agreement, and that a process of free, prior, and informed consent is established for the implementation of the ethnic chapter of the agreement with their full and effective participation. Under economic and social development, paragraph 9, line 8, after adopt, add the word policies. Chapter 11, fifth line, after used in, add the word the. Sixth line, delete provide in writing, insert conduct a review. Next line, delete update. After on the, insert impacts on Indigenous peoples of the. The paragraph now reads, the permanent forum is concerned at the World Bank's recent grant of a waiver to its Indigenous Peoples Policy, Operational Policy 4.10, and requests the World Bank to ensure that waivers will not be used in the future. Furthermore, the forum requests the bank to conduct a review on the impact on Indigenous peoples of the waiver issued to the Southern Agricultural Growth Corridor of Tanzania project to the forum. Under education, paragraph 18, line 1, delete paragraph 1. Line 7, insert and bring into practice the education of teachers of Indigenous languages in accordance with Indigenous peoples' initiatives. Under health, delete 23, yeah.
Just say
Paragraph 21. Line 7, after treatment in Indigenous populations, add in particular Indigenous women and youth. Document L7, future work of the Permanent Forum, including issues considered by the Economic and Social Council and emerging issues. Paragraph 1. Line 11. After consider hosting future, delete such. Paragraph 2. Line 10. Change serve to change serving to serve. Paragraph 4. Line 6. Delete including the Indigenous Peoples Language Caucus. Paragraph 6. Line 6. After platforms, insert approach to recognize and work with Indigenous knowledge throughout its work program, comma, for example, comma, delete operating principles, comma, including that of, comma. After recognizing, delete and respecting. Next line, after contribution of Indigenous, delete and local. After knowledge, insert in its global assessment on. At the end of the paragraph, insert the forum invites the platform to continue to inform the forum in the progress of its work, including at its 17th session in 2018. Is this L8? Or are these all informal papers now?
No, this is L8.
Okay. Under document L8, matters brought to the attention of the council. Paragraph 4.
Use this one.
Okay. Excuse me, paragraph 1. At the end of the paragraph, insert to increase the effectiveness of the work of the forum. Paragraph 2. Line 4. After permanent forum welcomed, this is wrong. Permanent forum welcomed by the forum.
The idea.
Okay.
So you read.
Yeah. The last line should read, the permanent forum welcomed the idea of holding the dialogue sessions in the future, comma, keeping in mind its mandate. So am I deleting all of paragraph 4?
Yes.
Paragraph 4, delete the entire paragraph. Paragraph 6, line 1 and 2, delete in addition to United Nations resident coordinators. Paragraph 6, line 5, after 2018, insert "and led by the UN resident coordinators." After "in selecting," insert "these." Line 7, after "such as those that are," delete "undergoing," insert "presenting." Paragraph 10, line 4, after "where possible," delete the "strengthening" and insert "encourages UN entities to continue collaboration with." And then you have a group of informal papers, which include the recommendations that were adopted on Agenda Item 9, Agenda Item 10, Agenda Item 11, Agenda Item 6, and then various additional recommendations adopted under Agenda Items 3, 4, 10, and 11. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je vous remercie, Monsieur.
I thank the rapporteur for his statement. I've been informed by the Secretariat that the draft recommendations in documents EC19 2017 L2, L4, L5, L6, L7, and L8, and the informal paper do not entail program budget implications.
Donc, ces projets ont déjà été révisés.
So these drafts have already been considered. I thank the Secretary. And we shall now take a decision on the draft decisions and recommendations documents EC 19 2017 L2, L4 to L8, and the informal paper. And we will take these documents one by one. The Forum will then proceed to take a decision on the procedural chapters of the draft report as contained in document EC 19 2017 L3. I would note that only members of the Permanent Forum are part of the decision-making process. Let us begin considering the recommendations in document EC 19 2017 L2. May I take it the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt document EC 19 2017 L2 containing the following draft decisions. Draft Decision 1, International Expert Group Meeting on the theme Sustainable Development in Territories of Indigenous Peoples. Draft Decision 2, Venue and dates of the 17th session of the Permanent Forum Draft Decision 3, Report of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues on its 16th session as orally revised by the Rapporteur. Since I hear no objection, it is so decided. I would now draw the attention of the Forum to the recommendations in document EC 19 2017 L4. May I take it the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt document EC 19 2017 L4 containing recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Agenda Item 8, a discussion on the theme 10th Anniversary of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, measures taken to implement the declaration, as orally revised by the rapporteur. I hear no objection. It is so decided. May I now draw the attention of the Permanent Forum to the recommendations contained in document EC19 2017 L5. May I take it the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt a document EC19 2017 L5 containing recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Agenda Item 3, a follow-up to recommendations of the Permanent Forum, as orally revised by the rapporteur. I hear no objection. It is so decided. I would now draw the attention of the Permanent Forum to the recommendations contained in document EC19 2017 L6. May I take it that the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt document EC19 2017 L6 containing the recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Agenda Item 4, implementation of the 6 mandated areas of the Permanent Forum with reference to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, as orally revised by the rapporteur. I hear no objection. It is so decided. I now draw the attention of the Forum to the recommendations contained in document EC19 2017 L7. May I take it the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt document EC19 2017 L7 containing recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Agenda Item 12, future work of the Permanent Forum, including issues considered by the Economic and Social Council and emerging issues, as orally revised by the rapporteur. I hear no objection. It is so decided. I now draw the attention of the Permanent Forum to the recommendations contained in document EC19 2017 L8. May I take it that the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt document EC19 2017 L8 containing recommendations of the Permanent Forum on Agenda Item 5, Dialogue with Indigenous Peoples, Item 6, Dialogue with Member States, and Item 7, Dialogue with the Funds, Programmes and Specialised Agencies of the United Nations System, as orally revised by the rapporteur. I hear no objection. It is so decided.
J'attire maintenant l'attention de l'instance permanente
I would now draw the Permanent Forum's attention to the recommendations it made under agenda items 9 to 11 of the agenda, which appear in the unofficial document distributed in the room. May I take it that the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt the recommendations that it has issued as contained in the informal paper as orally revised by the rapporteur? I hear no objection. It is so decided. We have thus completed action on all the draft proposals. Before taking action on the procedural chapters of the draft report, I give the floor to the rapporteur, Mr. Brian Keane, to introduce document E/C19/2017/L3.
Chair, it's my pleasure to introduce the procedural chapters of the draft report of the Permanent Forum on its 16th session as contained in document E/C.19/2017/L.2. In Chapter 1, matters calling for action by the Economic and Social Council are brought to its attention. Section A, which will be entitled Draft Decisions Recommended by the Forum for Adoption by the Council, will include the draft decisions contained in document E/C.19/2017/L 2017/217/L.3, which the forum has just adopted. Chapter 1, Section B, which will be entitled Matters Brought to the Attention of the Council, will include the draft recommendations just adopted as orally revised by the forum as contained in documents L4 to L8 and in an informal paper. Chapters 2 to 4 concern the proceedings of the 16th session of the forum. There may be a need to adjust some of the numbers and dates of the meetings to reflect the actual proceedings of the session. With the agreement of the members of the forum, I will make these technical changes with the support of the Secretariat. The list of documents for the session will be issued after the session in document E/C.19/2017/INF/2. I wish to recommend that the forum adopt the procedural chapters of the draft report as introduced. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Je remercie.
I thank the rapporteur for his statement. Does any member of the Permanent Forum wish to comment on the procedural chapters of the draft report? May I take it that the Permanent Forum wishes to adopt document E/C19/2017/L.3 entitled Draft Report, Chapters 1 to 4, on the understanding that the rapporteur will finalize it with the support of the Secretariat? I hear no objection. It is so decided.
J'invite maintenant les vice-présidents.
I would now like to invite the vice chairs to join me on the podium.
Maintenant, en ma qualité de
I would now, as chair of the 16th session of the Permanent Forum, like to make a few closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we have now reached the end of the 16th session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. These have been 2 intense weeks where hundreds of Indigenous peoples' representatives have gathered here at UN headquarters. They've come from all over the world to celebrate the 10th anniversary of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. This year's theme was the 10th anniversary of the Declaration, arouses mixed feelings. On the one hand, at the moment, there is cause for celebration and optimism. Since the adoption of the Declaration, we have seen a number of important signals of progress. First of all, and perhaps most importantly, there is now real consensus around the Declaration. At the time of the adoption of the Declaration in 2007, 4 states opposed the Declaration, while another 10 countries abstained. 7 years later, at the 2014 World Conference on Indigenous Peoples, all member states of the United Nations Organization pledged their commitment to implement the Declaration. A number of states have already modified their constitutions to align them with the Declaration. In many countries, laws have been amended to take account of the Declaration. or have been inspired by it, and the courts have been inspired by it both at a national and regional level. They refer to it and use it increasingly in their decision-making processes. Thanks to the declaration and the action of the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, the expert mechanism on the rights of Indigenous peoples, and of course the Permanent Forum of Indigenous Issues, the rights of Indigenous peoples are increasingly taken into account both at a national and international level. I am particularly pleased to see increasing engagement on the part of African states, and I welcome the news brought to us by the Assistant Secretary General, Mr. Lenny Montiel, on the work undertaken by DESA on Indigenous issues, along with Namibia, Kenya, Tanzania, and the Democratic Republic of Congo, among others, regarding Indigenous issues. I understand that Uganda will also begin to work with the UN on implementing the declaration at a national level. This is positive news and demonstrates that cooperation with Indigenous peoples and the promotion of Indigenous peoples' rights is not in any way a threat to states, but quite the opposite. When Indigenous peoples enjoy their rights and a certain degree of well-being, the society as a whole is healthier and contributes to making this world a better place for us all. The government of El Salvador understands the importance of promoting and ensuring the rights of Indigenous peoples. I note with satisfaction the announcement they made according to which there is a national action plan on Indigenous peoples currently being developed. This initiative is a manifestation, in fact, of the commitments taken by all governments at the 2014 World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. We encourage other countries to take similar tangible steps to promote the rights of Indigenous peoples. However, there is a great journey which we still need to accomplish. Despite the good news we have heard, progress is far too slow. Over the past 2 weeks, we have heard statements from hundreds of representatives of Indigenous peoples from across the globe, and we have noted that despite the fact that situations may vary, there are areas of common ground. Governments and the private sector still struggle to develop adequate and effective consultative mechanisms. Far too many of the statements that we heard were from Indigenous peoples describing encroachment on their traditional lands and territories, the extraction of natural resources, deforestation, and infrastructure projects that have displaced and dispossessed Indigenous peoples, disrupted their traditional livelihoods, and irreversibly damage the natural environment. Climate change continues at an ever-growing pace, and this is source for great alarm. And yet Indigenous peoples have a hugely positive contribution to make. Indigenous peoples have a vast wealth of traditional knowledge regarding their environment, and that knowledge can help countries to achieve sustainable development goals, adapt to climate change, and to mitigate the effects thereof. This observation is particularly ironic when we look at the negotiations underway within the General Assembly on the participation of Indigenous peoples' representative institutions at the United Nations. How can we understand it? How is it logical that the UN doesn't always want to work with Indigenous people when they have so much to offer? We are, of course, at the service of well-being, and Indigenous peoples have always supported the work of the organization. For this reason, I urge the member states of this illustrious assembly to do the right thing and to ensure that Indigenous peoples have the opportunity to participate in the work of the United Nations with permanent observer status, especially on matters that affect us. Nothing about us without us. I wish to thank the President of the General Assembly in moving this process forward, along with his 4 advisors. This year, we focused particularly on Indigenous human rights defenders, and I wish to thank the Special Rapporteur on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the Chair of the Expert Mechanism on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples for their participation. Regarding the situation of Indigenous human rights defenders, that is information of particular concern. There has been a worrying rise in the number of killings of human rights defenders over the past few years, and this is all the more concerning given that it is occurring with impunity. Many Indigenous human rights defenders are subject to threats, harassment, imprisonment, and other forms of human rights violations. These include attempts to delegitimize them by accusing them of criminal or terrorist activities. The Special Rapporteur mentioned the high rates of incarceration of Indigenous peoples in some of the countries she visited last year. There is something wrong with a criminal justice system that imprisons Indigenous peoples to such a degree. This is not the first time that this issue has been raised at the Permanent Forum. That is not justice. This is an unjust situation and must be addressed. The Permanent Forum stands ready and willing to work with states and Indigenous peoples to address this situation as a matter of urgency. During this session, we have organised 3 closed meetings with Indigenous peoples, member states, and with United Nations entities. In our dialogues with Indigenous peoples, we heard numerous examples of human rights violations, examples of a lack of recognition and failures by states to live up to their commitments and up to international standards. There is no other way to say it. Indigenous peoples are frustrated by the slow pace of progress which has been seen in the 10 years that have elapsed since the adoption of the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. It is true that states have made encouraging steps forward, but what we need now is action and the tangible implementation of the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. In our dialogues with member states, we heard about a number of initiatives that these states have undertaken to lend tangible form to their commitments that they made at the 2014 World Conference on Indigenous Peoples. It is important to acknowledge that many states are indeed making efforts to improve their relationship with Indigenous peoples. It should also be noted that many states do respect and recognize Indigenous peoples' decision-making institutions. Nevertheless, much more needs to be done, especially to ensure that Indigenous peoples can genuinely enjoy their right to self-determination and to ensure that Indigenous peoples are effectively properly consulted on matters that affect them. We thus look forward to continuing our dialogue with states on these matters. At the meeting with United Nations bodies within the UN system, we reviewed progress made in the implementation of the system-wide action plan on the rights of Indigenous peoples. We encourage the agencies to establish and strengthen their mechanisms in place to consult and work with Indigenous peoples. Moreover, we stressed at this meeting that UN agencies that work with Indigenous peoples must develop policies regarding engagement with Indigenous peoples, and we stress that these policies must be in line with the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Since the creation of the Permanent Forum, the United Nations organization, its member states, and the United Nations funds, programs, and specialized agencies have all made commitments that are genuinely positive in nature. Now we need to move from deed to action in order to ensure that real progress is accomplished. We have placed Indigenous peoples and their rights at the heart of the 2030 Sustainable Development Agenda. Our aim in so doing is to leave no one behind. We need to make their world a better and safer place, a world where the rights of Indigenous peoples are upheld both in spirit and practice. I thank you for your attention. I now invite Chief Wilton Littlechild to convey a spiritual message.
Nigan kahkeok tamskar no. Mstahe ehuichi ngetuan. I first want to give gratitude to the traditional owners and caretakers of these territories on which we have been meeting. I once heard it said that the last shall be first and the first shall be last. Normally, on occasions like this, the staff are the last ones to be thanked. But this time I want to be first in thanking the staff who've helped us here and the interpreters. Thank you very, very much. The quiet recorders that have been sitting there for 2 weeks, taking care of capturing our words, thank you. And also the security who make sure that we're safe in these rooms. And to you, of course, all delegations, all participants, the very able leadership of our chairperson and the rapporteur, and of course, to all the members of the new permanent forum. I want to recall that we started this session by honoring 4 people who blazed the trail to make sure that we could be here 10 years later. And I want to remember them as I give my Thanksgiving prayer, and I want to offer it from the 4 directions in my language. To thank Creator for all the blessings that we've received during this historic celebration of the 10th anniversary of the UN Declaration, a milestone that was your accomplishment. We paused to reflect back on where we come from, the distance we've traveled, but also we paused to look at where we are today, to determine where we need to go in the future. And yes, we still have much work to do. So my prayer for you is that you will all return safely to your home fires, and you will bring home health, hope, and happiness to your families and your friends. And my prayer also is that the next decade will be one of peace and reconciliation. So I ask you now to join me in your own way, in your own thoughts, in whatever way you acknowledge Creator or Great Spirit, to join me in offering a thanksgiving. Nohtaak manto asemina pego. Ninas kumonan stahe. Nstamota kamats mama upiak. Neo I sino kiki mantre maya kik. Erica Diaz, Squo Sicaso, Augusto Williamson Diaz, Napeu, Rodolfo Stavenhagen, Eugumina, Morris Strong, Wistamstahe kiki petosket. So we remember them, Great Spirit, in an askumwa akmstahe. Exuichi nano mota, ntatata skiego eki, mamo pikota, ex neo egoce, in an askumon. Ya hey hey hey. Ya hey 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 yo hey 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 yo hey yo hey yo hey ano taksemanto kiam gama miogiwan ano tahots tagiwe tutamak nskotemnan tananas kumaya ke kahki ono ako magannanak tahto kahki nakatayaakik Ispaksemme ano muute hutehnigaan. Kiame kohmahte ehkä amata kaski. Kiame ko miua kohtuun, miu itsehtuun, ohpintuin, saagihtuun tapas kummakahkoutta. Eks neo egohtse, niin askomon, Ninaskoman. Ai mantok se manto. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hey, hey, j'ai appris à dire merci
I learnt to say thank you in your language, hey hey. So I say hey hey to you, and I'll say that in my mother tongue as well. Now, before I close the session, I wish to pay tribute to my colleagues from the forum and thank them for their tireless efforts in ensuring the successful conclusion of the 16th session. Well done to you all. Well done. Congratulations to you on all your efforts, and thank you very much indeed for your cooperation. Thank you for having elected me to the chair of this 16th session. I also wish to thank all observers that have participated in this session, member states of the United Nations, intergovernmental organizations, UN agencies and Indigenous peoples representatives for their invaluable contributions to the work of the Permanent Forum. Finally, on behalf of the members of the Forum, I wish to express my gratitude, indeed our gratitude, to colleagues from the Secretariat. In this connection, I wish to particularly thank our colleagues from the Secretariat of the Permanent Forum. The head of the Secretariat is here, but I also wish to thank his colleagues here present, and our colleagues from the Division for Social Policy and Development in the Department of Economic and Social Affairs under the leadership of Ms. Chandra Roy Henriksen. Thank you to them for their invaluable support in preparing and ensuring the successful conclusion of this session. I also thank the Secretary, Ms. Sangeeta Sharma, and her colleagues from the Department for the General Assembly and Conference Management for their support. Finally, I wish to echo Chief Littlechild in thanking all the staff that have made it possible for us to convene here in this room, in the interpreters, sound engineers, conference officers, security guards, and all other staff members involved in working to make this session a success. I now declare closed the 16th session of the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues.